Funerals are supposed to be quiet, sacred, but when Officer Riley Monroe stood by her father's casket, dressed in her black uniform, holding back tears, her K-9 partner, Diesel, didn't mourn. He growled, he snarled, and then he lunged, barking, foaming, clawing at the floor beneath the coffin, as if something was down there, something wrong. They tried to pull him away. He wouldn't move. What they discovered under that casket changed everything they thought they knew about the man they were burying, and exposed a truth someone died to keep buried. Hi, my amazing friends and family. Welcome back to another story for today. If you are ready to enjoy this heartwarming story, smash the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. I love seeing all your names and places. Also, don't forget to check out more of our interesting videos on the channel. Now back to the story. The graveyard was too quiet. The kind of quiet that made your heartbeat feel too loud in your ears. Not the comforting hush of a service. Not the peaceful kind that settles over a family laid to rest. No, this silence felt tight, like it was holding its breath. Riley Monroe stood at attention beneath a canopy of gray clouds, her black uniform dusted with light snow. It clung to the edges of her boots, melting against the heat of her grief. Her cap was tucked under one arm, her dark braid pulled tight, like the pressure in her chest. Her K-9 partner, Diesel, sat just behind her left leg, still, watching. His ears were up, shoulders tense. The leash hung loose in her fingers, but she didn't need to hold it tight. He was trained, loyal. The casket was draped in the old blue of the department flag. Her father's badge number was stitched into the corner, thin silver thread over deep blue velvet. They called him a hero. They always did. Decorated, trusted, unshakable. Captain Raymond Monroe had been more than a cop. He was a symbol. The kind of man who still got called sir long after he retired. He taught rookies how to read crime scenes like poetry. He'd once pulled a teenager off the ledge of the Northbridge Tower and talked him down with nothing but a cup of coffee and a steady voice. They said it was his heart. A sudden collapse at home. Instant. Peaceful. Nothing to be done. But nothing about Riley's insides felt peaceful. She swallowed hard. Her throat burned. Her eyes, dry as bone, stared straight ahead. She hadn't cried. Not yet. Not once. Behind her, the rustle of uniforms and hushed voices passed like a chill wind. The department had shown up in full force. Squad cars lined the edge of the cemetery. Motorcycles gleamed beneath thin layers of frost. Badges polished. Gloves black. Eyes down. The chaplain stepped forward, voice warm and practiced. We gather here not only to remember a man, but to honor a life of service. A legacy of courage. Riley didn't hear the rest. Her gaze was locked on the casket. Her fingers twitched, and she placed them lightly on Diesel's head. His fur was damp, soft under her palm. That's when his ears twitched. Just a flick at first. Then both pointed straight ahead. He let out a small huff of breath, eyes locked forward. Riley blinked. Diesel's muscles tensed. His tail froze. He leaned forward slightly. It was subtle. Maybe no one else noticed. But she did. Something was wrong. The pastor kept speaking. Clean voice, practiced words. Captain Monroe served this city for 34 years with distinction. He upheld the law, protected the innocent, and inspired a generation of officers. Someone behind Riley sniffled. A cough. The creak of a leather belt. The cold bit harder. Diesel shifted again. This time, his lips parted just enough to let out a soft growl. Barely audible, but it was there. Riley gently nudged his shoulder with her knee. "Shoo!" she whispered. "Not now." Diesel didn't move. He stared at the casket like it was breathing. Another growl, this one louder. Low, rumbling from his chest. Several heads turned. The pastor paused briefly but continued. Riley looked down sharply. "Diesel, heel." Her voice was steady, but her stomach had dropped into her boots. The shepherd ignored her command. He stood, full height, body rigid, eyes locked on the base of the casket. The leash pulled taut. Riley's arm moved with it. Now people were turning. A woman in a thick coat whispered, "Is he okay?" A uniformed officer too rose back, leaned forward, eyebrows raised. Diesel let out a single, sharp bark. Riley flinched. Gasps whispered through the crowd. The chaplain faltered. Sometimes animals sense emotion more than we do," he said gently, trying to smooth the moment. "Perhaps he's feeling our grief." But Riley wasn't so sure. Diesel wasn't pacing. He wasn't whining. He was pointing, locked on, guarding, like he'd found a threat. But what threat could be here? This was a funeral, wasn't it? Riley knelt beside Diesel, wrapping her arm around his thick neck. His fur was bristling. "Easy, buddy," she whispered. "It's okay. I'm right here." He gave her a quick glance, just a flash, then back to the casket. His nose twitched, his body angled, front paw inching forward. She followed his gaze. The coffin sat on a raised platform, flowers draped at the corners. The stand beneath it looked solid, polished wood base over cement floor. But beneath that, a storage chamber, maybe. Some chapels had utility crawl spaces under the altar. Storage for ceremony equipment, sometimes ashes. Rarely touched. A tremor ran through Riley's spine. The dog wasn't looking at the casket. He was looking underneath it. Diesel growled again, sharp, guttural. And this time he barked. Louder. Then again. People stepped back. A few gasped. "Ma'am, do you need to remove him?" A funeral worker asked, already stepping forward. "He might be." "I said stay back," Riley snapped. Her voice cut through the air like ice. The man froze. So did everyone else. Diesel began pawing at the ground in front of the platform. Not playfully, frantically. His claws scraped against concrete. His nose jammed between the cracks in the base. Riley's heart was racing. She could feel her pulse in her teeth. He was alerting, not panicking. Alerting. The same way he did when he found narcotics in sealed lockers. The same way he did when they pulled 2 bodies from the riverbank last fall. Instinct. Training. Truth. Diesel knew. By the time the final prayer ended, no one was focused on the words. They were all watching the dog. Riley hadn't moved from his side. Her fingers were tight on the leash, but not pulling. She was frozen, her mind spiraling. After the service, people came forward. Hushed condolences, embraces, a few old friends from her academy days, her father's partner from the 90s. But Diesel didn't relax. He circled the platform, slowly, sniffing the perimeter. He bumped a floral wreath off balance. Someone reached to stop him. Riley's hand shot up. "Don't," she said. Her voice was flat. One of the younger officers leaned closer. "He's acting like there's, I don't know, something in there." Riley didn't answer. She was already pulling out her phone. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Calling the precinct? The coroner's office? She didn't even know. Diesel was back at the corner of the casket now. Sitting. Perfect posture. Eyes unblinking. Watching. Waiting. And that's when she knew. This wasn't just grief. This wasn't nerves. This wasn't instinct. It was a warning. And it was just the beginning. The snow was falling thicker now, clinging to black coats and folding into the grass like pale ash. The chapel steps were slick behind them. A thin layer of frost edged the corners of every polished shoe. Riley didn't move. Her spine stayed straight, her breath tight in her chest. Diesel sat at her heel, just as he'd been trained. A statue of discipline and muscle. But something about him had changed. She could feel it in the way his head tilted. His body no longer relaxed. His ears twitching sharply with every word the pastor spoke. The man's voice carried steady through the cold air. Captain Raymond Monroe served his city with honor, with courage, with an unshakable sense of duty. He was more than an officer. He was a father, a mentor, a symbol of justice for all who served beside him. There it was again. A low hum, not from the speakers, from Diesel. A growl, soft at first, tucked in the back of his throat like a warning coiled too long. Riley looked down. His fur had bristled. His shoulders were tight. His eyes locked straight ahead. Her grip on the leash tightened. Diesel, she whispered, low and careful. Easy. But he didn't relax. Instead, his nose lifted slightly toward the casket. A soft whine escaped his mouth. It was the kind of sound he made when something didn't sit right. Not danger, not fear, but unease. Mourners shifted. Someone behind Riley coughed. The pastor kept speaking. Though retired, Captain Monroe remained a guardian in spirit. He believed in truth even when it cost him. He believed in Diesel stood. No command given. Just up, slow, deliberate, alert. Riley's arm followed, leash stretched. The movement was too fast for most to notice, but Riley caught it. She'd worked with this dog for 3 years. She knew the difference between nerves and instinct. This wasn't nerves. His tail had gone rigid. His body leaned forward. Hackles raised. Then came the bark. Sharp, loud, cracked through the service like a bullet. Heads turned instantly. The pastor flinched. Someone gasped. Another bark. Louder this time. Deep, aggressive. Riley yanked back gently. Heel, she hissed. Diesel, no. But Diesel didn't listen. He began pulling, body low, eyes locked on the casket. Not just looking, staring like prey had moved. Apologies, Riley muttered quickly to the people closest, trying to steady her hand. Diesel barked again. One mourner stepped back. An older woman grabbed her purse tighter. He okay? Someone whispered. Riley shook her head. I don't know. She crouched quickly, putting her hand on Diesel's chest. She tried to guide him back into a sit. He refused. His paw slammed the ground. Again and again, pawing toward the base of the coffin like something was under it. The growl returned, deeper now. A vibration in his ribcage. Riley felt it against her palm. Diesel, talk to me, she whispered. What is it? The pastor stopped speaking entirely. His words fell away like the snow. Silence except for Diesel's growl. The funeral director approached, eyes unsure. Ma'am, maybe he should be taken outside for a moment. He might be confused. Or grieving. Riley stood, placing herself between the man and the dog. He's not confused, she said firmly. And he doesn't grieve like that. The man stepped back. Diesel snapped his head sharply toward the coffin, then let out one long, unbroken bark that echoed across the cemetery lawn. That was it. The leash slipped from Riley's hand in that split second. Diesel lunged. Not wildly, not violently, but with purpose. Straight for the casket. The crowd parted like water. People backed away, muttering. Riley moved fast behind him, shouting his name, but Diesel had already reached the raised platform. He stood at the edge, nose pressed low, sniffing the base. He barked again, then began clawing at the wooden floor beneath the coffin stand. Loud, desperate, focused. Not once did he look away. Riley grabbed his harness, trying to calm him. Diesel, that's enough. He didn't bite, didn't pull away, but he didn't stop either. He pawed furiously at a spot near the rear leg of the platform, scraping, digging, whining now like he had found something buried. Ma'am, this is... The funeral director started again, but Riley turned on him. I said don't touch him. Her voice was steel. The man shut up. She crouched again beside Diesel, placing both hands on his neck. What is it? What do you smell? Diesel's ears tilted back, eyes softening just a second, then refocused. Another bark. One mourner's wouldn't forget. He pawed harder, now scratching at a seam in the floor. One Riley hadn't noticed before. A hairline gap in the wood. She brushed away snow and dust. A hinge. A panel? Diesel stepped back slightly, letting her see it. This wasn't supposed to open, the director said nervously behind her. That's just... There's nothing under there. That's not what he thinks, Riley replied. Diesel barked again. Louder. The tension was sharp now. Mourners were whispering. Some were filming. Others just stood frozen. Riley ran her finger along the gap. Cold air seeped through it. Too cold. She looked back at the funeral director. Get someone to unlock this panel, she said. Now. Officer Monroe, please. This isn't. Now. Her voice left no room for debate. Diesel barked once more, then sat beside her. Not agitated anymore. Just watching. Waiting. The director nodded, pale-faced, and jogged toward the maintenance shed. Riley didn't move. She stayed kneeling next to the casket, heart pounding, blood rushing in her ears. Her father had died of a heart attack. A clean case. No foul play. No red flags. But her dog had never lied to her. Diesel had never reacted like this before. Not even during their most dangerous raids. Something was wrong here. Something was under her father's coffin. And whatever it was, Diesel had smelled it before anyone else did. She placed a hand on his back, steady. "Good boy," she whispered. "We're going to find it. I promise." Riley stayed on one knee beside her K9 partner, heart pounding against her ribs like a warning drum. Diesel didn't move. His eyes were locked on that thin seam in the wooden platform beneath the casket, the one Riley hadn't seen until now. The one the dog found with no words, no instruction. Just instinct. The funeral director returned with a small ring of keys and a face that looked like it didn't want to be part of whatever was about to happen. "There's a utility hatch," he mumbled, crouching down near the back of the casket stand. "Supposed to just be wiring and storage, nothing more. No access for public viewings." Riley didn't respond. Diesel's body was low, tense, eyes burning into the floor. The man slid one of the keys into a recessed lock hidden beneath a wooden panel lip. Clicked, stiff and loud in the cold. He pulled. The hatch didn't move. He pulled again, harder. It groaned. And then it lifted. A sharp creak split the silence. The panel opened like the lid of a forgotten box. What rose out next wasn't air. It was something else. A smell. Thick, rotten, metallic. It hit the first row of mourners like a slap. People gasped. One woman gagged, pressing a hand to her mouth. Another man stumbled back and said, "What in the world is that?" Riley stood slowly, backing Diesel away just a few steps. The scent poured up from the crawlspace like a secret that had been trapped too long. It wasn't mildew. It wasn't old wood. It was blood. And something worse. "Flashlight," Riley said quickly, turning to the funeral director. "Now." He nodded, too stunned to argue, and disappeared into the hall. Diesel growled again. Not out of fear. Not out of confusion. He knew what was down there. When the man returned, he handed Riley a long metal flashlight with shaking fingers. She clicked it on. A narrow cone of white light sliced into the open floor. She crouched beside the hatch and angled the beam downward. At first, she saw only dirt, then plastic, tarp, folded tightly into a crawlspace barely 4 feet deep. Someone had tried to seal it, wrapped it in duct tape, too tight, and then she saw the hand. Gray, human. The fingers curled toward the ceiling like they'd reached for help that never came. Riley inhaled sharply. Her stomach turned cold, but her face didn't flinch. She'd seen death before, but this wasn't right. Not here. Not under her father's coffin. "Everyone step back," she ordered, her voice suddenly the sharp edge of a badge again. "Now." No one argued. The mourners stepped away. The whispers turned into frantic murmurs. Someone had already pulled out their phone. Riley didn't care. She handed the flashlight to the director. "Hold it steady." Then she dropped to her stomach and slid half her body into the crawlspace. Diesel barked once behind her, sharp and protective. She whispered, "Stay," and felt his weight still. The cold air inside was wet and foul. Her hand touched the tarp. She pulled it slightly back. Peeled like skin from old glue. The face revealed beneath it was swollen. Blue. A man. Early 30s, maybe. Mouth duct-taped. Hands bound behind his back. Riley didn't need a medical examiner to tell her this wasn't natural causes. This was murder. And someone had buried him beneath the platform where her father's casket sat like a crown. She pulled herself back up, breathing hard. The chapel had gone quiet again. People stared. Phones hovered, unsure whether to record or call the police. "Call in a crime scene unit," she said flatly to the director. Secure the area. No one leaves. The man blinked at her. What? Who is he? How did he get down there? I don't know yet, she said, turning toward the casket. Her voice dropped. But someone wanted him hidden. Badly. She looked down at Diesel, who now sat beside the opening, tail still, ears forward. You found him, she whispered. He looked up at her, blinked once, and licked her hand. Outside, the wind shifted. Sirens, faint in the distance, began to howl. And inside the chapel, Riley stared down into the hole beneath her father's coffin and wondered if this was a coincidence or a message. The sirens got louder, faint at first, like echoes across water, then closer, sharper, the kind of sound that turned heads and made hearts stutter. Inside the chapel, no one moved. They didn't breathe loud, didn't whisper, didn't blink too long. Something had changed. It wasn't a funeral anymore. It was something darker, something colder. Riley stood over the open panel in the floor, her jaw tight, hands steady. Her fingers still smelled like the plastic tarp. Diesel stayed beside her, his body pressed close, as if guarding the hatch. His tail didn't wag. His ears didn't flick. He just stared down into the dark. The man in the crawl space didn't look peaceful. Nothing about him did. The skin was gray, the eyes half-lidded. His wrists were taped so tight the skin had burst through. Whoever he was, he hadn't been laid to rest. He'd been thrown away. One of the patrol officers finally arrived. Young, nervous, he hesitated by the front pew, unsure whether to salute or throw up. Ma'am, he said. Dispatch said there was a disturbance? Riley turned slowly. Her badge wasn't on her uniform today. Her father's service didn't call for it. But her voice held authority like a drawn weapon. There's a body, she said, under the chapel. And this is officially a crime scene now. The kid paled. Another one? She blinked. What do you mean, another one? He pointed toward the parking lot. They said there's a team heading to your dad's house. His neighbor reported a broken back door. Fresh blood. Riley's stomach dipped. Diesel growled again, soft and low, still watching the hatch. His body shifted. His nose brushed the wooden edge of the crawl space. Then, without warning, he stepped forward. He dropped to his belly and slithered partway inside. Diesel, no. Riley reached for him, but his tail had already disappeared into the opening. A tense second passed. Then two. She dropped down fast, shoulders pressed to the wood, face tilted toward the dark. Diesel, come back. A low whine echoed from the hole. Not fear. Not warning. Sadness. She reached for her flashlight and clicked it back on. Her fingers trembled. She leaned forward and swept the beam across the space again. At first, it was the same body, same tarp, same stench. But then the light hit another shape. Something behind the first victim. Wrapped tighter, smaller. Riley froze. It was another body. The plastic looked newer, cleaner. The tarp was darker, like it hadn't been there long. She could barely see a face, but what she saw turned her blood to slush. Red hair, short, a watch on the wrist, silver, still ticking. She recognized that watch. She had bought it herself. For her father. Riley's breath caught. She pushed herself farther down, the flashlight beam locked on the wrist, on the face beneath the tarp. The skin was pale, the cheek sunken, but there was no denying it. It was him. It was Captain Raymond Monroe, her father, the real one. She didn't scream. She couldn't. Her throat closed. Her heartbeat went into free fall. Above her, the fake coffin stood tall, still polished, still draped in flags and flowers. But beneath her, the truth. Diesel pressed his nose to the tarp gently, then let out a soft, helpless whimper. Riley sat back hard, legs folding underneath her. Her father hadn't died of a heart attack. Someone had killed him, and whoever was in that coffin up top, it wasn't him. She looked back into the crawl space, eyes burning. Two bodies. One fresh, one rotting. Both hidden under a place meant to honor the dead. She grabbed her radio from her belt. She clipped it on just in case. "Dispatch, this is Officer Monroe," she said, voice brittle. "We have a double homicide. Repeat, double homicide. Send CSU. And get me the damn coroner. Now." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Monroe. Units en route." She set the device down slowly. Her eyes didn't leave the hole. Someone had faked her father's death. Staged a whole funeral. Lied to the department. Lied to her. And then stuffed him under a church floor like garbage. Diesel crawled back up beside her. His fur was damp, his muzzle covered in dust. He lay down slowly, head pressed to her knee. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just breathed. Soft, heavy, mourning. She put a hand on his head, barely able to hold it steady. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew he was down there." The chapel was dead silent. Outside, the sirens finally stopped. Tires crunched gravel. Boots hit pavement. Officers poured into the chapel like water through broken glass. But Riley didn't move. She stared at the fake casket, at the flowers, at the folded flag. Then she looked back at the hole, at the truth. And in that moment, she didn't feel like a daughter at a funeral. She felt like a detective at a murder scene. Because that's exactly what this was. And it wasn't over. Not even close. The sound of boots echoed off the chapel walls. Officers moved in silence, stepping around the pews with measured, respectful strides. But no one spoke. No one saluted. No one looked at the casket anymore. Their eyes were on the hole in the floor. Crime scene tape was already stretched across the platform. A white tent had been set up by the forensic unit just outside the doors. The scent of chemicals now mixed with the lingering cold and something darker. The truth. Riley stood near the entrance, still in her funeral uniform. Her badge now clipped firmly to her hip. Her eyes were red, but not from tears. From fury. Diesel lay at her side, silent as a shadow. He hadn't left her since they uncovered the second body. Since they found the real Captain Monroe. Not buried in ceremony, but shoved beneath it. The coroner had confirmed it quickly. Dental records. The missing watch. Cause of death not yet released, but the bruising was clear. This was no heart attack. There was blunt force trauma. Restraint marks. He'd been murdered. And the question wasn't just who did it. It was why. Riley pulled out her father's old leather notebook. She had found it in his desk drawer 2 nights before the funeral. At the time, it felt like a keepsake. Something to hold on to. But now it felt like a lead. The front cover was cracked with age. His handwriting inside was sharp, clean, obsessive. Each page carried names, dates, notes written in shorthand. She recognized a few of them, names from the precinct old partner's case files. One line kept repeating. Not what it seemed. That phrase showed up 5 times. Always underlined. She turned to the middle pages. There was one entry circled in thick red ink. A name. One she didn't know. Donovan Ricks. Missing. 2011. No resolution. Last seen near the old iron freight yard. Suspected overdose. Body never recovered. Case closed. Fast. Too fast. Not what it seemed. Her father had written that phrase again and again like a drumbeat. Then, another note beneath it. I got too close. They wanted it buried. Riley stared at the page. Her fingers clenched the leather cover. Could it be? She walked over to the medical examiner, who was reviewing samples under a portable light. Do we have an ID on the first body? She asked. He looked up slowly. Still working on confirmation, but based on facial structure, we think it matches a cold case from 11 years ago. A missing person. Name was Ricks. Donovan Ricks. Riley's hand dropped to her side. She didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. So it was true. The man buried beneath her father wasn't just a body. He was the missing link. The ghost her father couldn't let go of. The case the department had buried to keep something else quiet. Her father hadn't just been murdered. He had been silenced. Diesel stood up beside her, sensing the shift in her breath. Riley looked back down at the notebook, at the scrawled words on the bottom of that final page. I'll never stop digging. Her throat tightened. He meant it literally. She turned to the lieutenant in charge of the crime scene. I need access to all files on Donovan Ricks. Internal reports. Everything from 2011 and onward. I want to know who filed the paperwork. Who closed it. Who signed off. The man nodded, eyebrows raised. Yes, ma'am. But, if you don't mind me asking, why would your father be looking into that case so many years later? Riley didn't blink. Because he knew something. And someone made sure he wouldn't talk. She stepped away, her mind working faster than her heartbeat. The coffin. The funeral. The sealed hatch. This wasn't random. This wasn't sloppy. It was planned. The body under the chapel was a message. Or maybe a warning. Diesel followed close behind her as she left the building. Outside, the sun was trying to break through the clouds, casting silver light across the snow. The air smelled of smoke and something bitter cover-up. She opened her truck door and slid into the driver's seat. Diesel hopped in beside her, ears still on full alert. Riley placed the notebook on the dashboard and opened her laptop. She began typing. Keywords. Case IDs. Officer rosters from 2011. Patterns started to form. Donovan Ricks had been a small-time informant, tied to a major trafficking ring that went belly-up during an internal investigation. Several officers had been quietly reassigned after that case. No charges. No press. One of them had been her father's old partner, Detective Ellis Crow. Riley stared at the screen. She hadn't seen Crow in years. Not since she graduated from academy. He'd shown up at her father's retirement party. Drunk. Nervous. Talking too much. Then vanished off the radar. She picked up her phone and dialed the old precinct line. Records Division. A tired voice answered. Officer Monroe. I need a current address on former Detective Ellis Crow. Classified under Case File 3341-B. Send it encrypted. Yes, ma'am. Sending now. She hung up. The address pinged to her inbox 30 seconds later. Not far. 2 towns over. Diesel let out a low chuff beside her, head tilted. He was ready. Riley placed a hand on his neck. This was his final case, she said quietly. And we're not leaving it cold. She closed the notebook, tossed it onto the passenger seat, and shifted into gear. Behind her, the chapel faded in the rearview mirror. Ahead, answers, and possibly more bodies. The road stretched long and quiet ahead of her. The snow had melted in places, leaving patches of wet asphalt that reflected the late afternoon sky like broken mirrors. Riley's fingers tightened around the wheel. The silence inside the truck was thick. Too thick. Even Diesel sat still beside her, not panting, not shifting. Just alert. Watching. Listening. The address had led her to a half-burnt mobile home 30 miles outside city limits. Ellis Crow hadn't lived there in years. The place looked like it had swallowed fire and forgotten how to breathe. The neighbors said he left one night without a word. No forwarding address. No goodbye. But Riley wasn't done. She turned back toward her father's house. The police had sealed the back door with yellow tape, but the lock was still broken. The frame splintered from someone trying to force their way in. Inside, drawers were half opened. Papers tossed. Nothing stolen, but everything touched. Not a burglary. A search. She moved carefully through the house, Diesel glued to her hip like a second shadow. Her boots echoed softly across the floor, the walls still holding the scent of his cologne, the ghost of his routine. She paused in the hallway, staring at the framed photos. Her father in uniform, her academy graduation, the two of them fishing, laughing. She swallowed hard and turned into his study. It looked undisturbed. Too undisturbed. Her father had always kept his files locked in the bottom drawer of the cabinet. But the lock had been twisted open, like someone had forced it and then closed it again, hoping she wouldn't notice. She dropped to her knees and opened it. Nothing. Empty. No files. But something caught her eye, taped to the underside of the drawer's top panel. A small flash drive. She peeled it off carefully. It had no label, no markings, just plain black plastic. She slid it into her laptop and opened the folder inside. Encrypted, but not complicated. Her father had always used one password for his private documents, the name of their first family dog. Jasper. She typed it in. The folder opened. Inside were several documents and 3 voicemails. She clicked the first file. It was a scanned note, handwritten in her father's script. They're watching. Even now. Don't trust anyone wearing a badge who didn't earn it. She leaned back in her chair, the chill crawling up her spine. The second file was a list of names. All familiar. Current officers. High-ranking. People she worked with. Some of them had signed off on Donovan Rick's case. Others had ties to the freight yard where he vanished. And one name was circled twice. Deputy Chief Mercer. Riley clenched her jaw. Mercer had spoken at the funeral, shaken her hand, said her father was a hero. The third file was a map satellite view of the freight yard from 2011, with areas marked in red. One building had been circled. She recognized it immediately, a shipping container lot. It had since been torn down. She clicked on the first voicemail. Her father's voice came through, gravelly and rushed. Riley, if you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it. And I'm sorry, but I got too close. Ricks didn't overdose. He was trying to expose them. Mercer, Crow, maybe more. They buried him because he knew. And now they're coming after me. Click. She stared at the screen, heart in her throat. Diesel whined softly beside her, nudging her arm. She clicked the second voicemail. They tapped my phones. They know I'm watching. I found evidence. Photos. Testimony. It's in the second safe, the one in the garage behind the workbench. You remember where? Click. She rose instantly. Her legs carried her through the house without thinking. The garage was cold, the light flickering overhead. She moved to the back wall, behind the bench her father always kept clean. The wall panel was slightly ajar. She slid it aside. There it was, a second safe. She entered his birthday. The lock clicked. Inside was a thick envelope and a burner phone. She tore the envelope open. Photos spilled out. Donovan Ricks, alive, standing beside a black SUV. Time-stamped. Dated 3 days before his supposed disappearance. Another photo, Mercer, exiting the same SUV. Then a shot of Crow handing off what looked like a duffel bag to someone in a hood. Then finally, one of her father, peering through binoculars from a rooftop. He'd been watching them, tracking them, gathering evidence. And someone had found out. She picked up the burner phone and turned it on. One message sat in the inbox. It was audio. She played it. You should have stayed retired, Ray. Now we have to clean up your mess. Riley froze. The voice was distorted, but the threat was clear. This wasn't just about old crimes. This was still happening. Diesel let out a low growl. Her blood ran cold. They hadn't just killed her father. They were still cleaning up, which meant she was next. The audio message cut out, but its weight didn't. Riley stared at the screen, the last words echoing in her skull like gunshots behind glass. You should have stayed retired. Now we have to clean up your mess. Her hands were steady, but only just. Diesel stood at the garage doorway, his body low, tail stiff. He sensed it too. The air wasn't right anymore. The cold felt closer, thicker, like it was pressing against the walls of the house. Riley pocketed the burner phone and grabbed the envelope of photos. She walked out without turning off the lights. She left the garage door cracked open. If they were watching, she wanted them to see movement. Let them think she was home. But she wasn't staying. Not tonight. Not after that message. The drive to the precinct was quiet. The city looked softer in the dark, but her thoughts were loud. Her father's case hadn't just gone cold. It had been buried in cement. And she had a name now, a big one. Chief Ellis Crow. Her father's old partner. A man who knew how to close files without leaving fingerprints. She parked across the street from the precinct. No lights on in the front office. The building looked asleep. But Riley knew better. The chief's car was still there. Same dent in the bumper. Same rust ring under the back door. He was inside. She left Diesel in the truck. But not far. She didn't leash him. She didn't need to. Inside the building, her boots echoed down the hallway. Every step felt like it cracked the floor open. She passed empty desks, faded posters, coffee mugs left behind by officers who still trusted the badge. Then she reached the office door. Police Chief Ellis Crow. She didn't knock. She opened it. Crow looked up from a stack of papers, his eyes narrowing like someone squinting into sunlight that came too late. "Riley," he said. "It's late." "Yeah," she replied. "It is." He motioned to the chair. "Everything all right?" She didn't sit. She placed the envelope on his desk, opened it, let the photos spill out. Crow didn't flinch, but he didn't touch them either. She watched his face closely. "I found this in my dad's safe," she said. "The one he never told anyone about. Funny thing is, all of it points back to you." Crow leaned back slowly, folding his hands. "Those photos, how long have you had them?" "Long enough." He nodded once. "You shouldn't have come here. Neither should those bodies under the chapel," she snapped. "But here we are." Crow stood. He didn't reach for a weapon, didn't shout. His eyes looked tired, not surprised, just resigned. "I told your father to let it go," he said. Donovan Ricks wasn't clean. He was feeding the cartel info on both sides. He got caught in something bigger than he understood. That doesn't explain the fake overdose, or why you closed the case early. Crow looked at the wall, not at her. Because Mercer was involved, and Mercer had friends. Riley's stomach sank. "He gave you pressure?" she asked. Crow nodded. "And promises. I was next in line for the promotion. He said if I made the file disappear, I'd never have to wear a bulletproof vest again. And you took it." "I took it," he said softly. "And your father never forgave me." Riley felt her jaw clench. "You let them bury a man alive in paperwork." Crow finally looked her in the eyes. "And they buried your father in silence." The room dropped 10 degrees. Riley stepped closer. "Why was he in the crawlspace, Ellis?" Crow exhaled hard, like a man caught in a net of his own making. "Because he kept digging," he said. "And Mercer doesn't like loose ends." "Then why fake a funeral?" "To buy time. If the world thought Ray Monroe was already buried, then Mercer had room to breathe. But your father hid the files before they could reach him. And you found them." Riley's pulse was ice now. "So now I'm the next mess to clean up." Crow didn't speak. Outside, Diesel barked once. Riley turned. "You're going to give me access," she said, "to everything you touched. Every case you closed under Mercer's name. Every officer who helped you do it." Crow nodded slowly. Then his eyes shifted. Down the hallway. Footsteps. Heavy. Fast. Riley drew her gun. The office lights flickered. Crow whispered, "Too late." Then the glass behind him shattered. A bullet tore through the wall. He dropped. Blood sprayed across the desk. Riley dove behind the filing cabinet, heart in her throat. Diesel's growl cut through the air like a blade. The front door banged open. Riley rolled onto her stomach, fired once down the hall. Boots scrambled. Return fire tore chunks from the drywall. She crawled to Crow's body. His hand shook. His lips moved, but no sound. Riley leaned close. He whispered one word. "Locker." Then his hand fell limp. She didn't stop to cry. She grabbed the photo envelope, ducked behind the hallway wall, and sprinted for the locker room. Diesel was already there, teeth bared, eyes wild. She found Crow's old locker, key around his neck. She ripped it free, opened the door. Inside, another envelope, larger, heavier, stamped with a seal she hadn't seen in years. Departmental Misconduct Archive, and taped to it a thumb drive, labeled Mercer. Riley's hands shook as she pocketed it. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Diesel barked again. She looked at him. He looked at her. And they ran. Out the back. Into the snow. Alive. For now. The world didn't look the same in the morning. Not after what happened in that office. Riley sat alone in the back booth of an all-night diner on the edge of town. The coffee in her cup had gone cold. Her clothes smelled like gunpowder and sweat. Diesel lay curled beneath the table, his head resting on one of her boots, eyes still wide open. He hadn't slept either. She kept glancing over her shoulder. No cops. No suits. No Mercer. Not yet. Her laptop sat open in front of her. A single email blinked on the screen. Subject line, Private Talks Results, Raymond Monroe. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she clicked. The document opened slow, as if it already knew what was inside was going to hurt. It wasn't a heart attack. It was poison. Low dose. Administered over weeks. The report listed the chemical compound in clean, scientific lines, but Riley didn't need fancy words. She understood exactly what it meant. Her father was murdered from the inside out. Somebody fed him death little by little until his body gave up. There were traces in his blood, in his liver, in the lining of his stomach. It wasn't natural. It was methodical, cruel. She leaned back, her hands trembling, not from fear, from rage. She had buried a man she thought had died peacefully, but now she knew he didn't pass in his sleep. He suffered, and the worst part? He knew it, because he'd been investigating the same people who were watching him die. She stared at the report, then down at the table, then back at the name of the compound. It was an exotic toxin, not easy to come by, military grade, disguised as medication if needed. It had no scent, no taste, no immediate symptoms, until it was too late. She clenched her fist. Whoever did this wanted her father to look weak, like he had just faded, because if people thought he was tired, sick, slipping, then no one would believe what he found before he died. But he found something, and she was holding the last piece of it now. She opened the other file she had copied from Crow's locker, the one with Mercer's name stamped on it. It was a memo, an internal affairs warning, unfiled, never submitted. Her father had written it but never sent it. Deputy Chief Mercer. Possible ties to organized trafficking / money laundering / evidence manipulation. Subject had contact with confidential informant D. Ricks 3 days before informant's disappearance. Subject access tox registry database under former medical alias. Recommend investigation and temporary suspension. Her father had put it all together. He just never got the chance to send it, because someone silenced him first. Riley's head dropped. Diesel whined softly under the table. She reached down and rested her hand on his neck. "I'm going to end this," she whispered, and then her phone buzzed. One new message. Blocked number. She opened it. It was a photo of her father, sitting on his porch, taken weeks ago. The message read, "He never should have opened his mouth." Her stomach twisted. They weren't finished. This was a warning. But she didn't scare easy. She didn't get this far to freeze now. She shut her laptop, grabbed her coat, and dropped a 20 on the table. Diesel was already standing before she said a word. They stepped out into the cold air together. The world smelled sharper today, like something about to break. And then she remembered something from earlier. The second body. Donovan Ricks, the man who vanished without a trace. The coroner's report had arrived quietly the night before. She hadn't had time to read it, not with bullets flying. But now she opened it, and what she saw floored her. He'd been dead less than a week, which meant he didn't vanish in 2011. He had been held somewhere, kept alive, maybe forced to talk, then dumped under the church floor like garbage. And that meant her father didn't just stumble into a cold case. He'd found a whistleblower and died protecting him. Ricks was the final witness, her father's last shield. They killed them both, and now they were coming for her. Riley's eyes burned. Her father had left breadcrumbs everywhere, the safe, the notebook, the files, the burner phone. Not because he was paranoid, because he knew this day would come, because he knew someone had to keep going after he was gone. She looked at Diesel. He met her eyes with full, unshaken loyalty. Then she said it out loud. Just once. Just for herself. "They murdered my dad." And now, she was going to burn the lies down to the foundation. The headlines dropped like thunder the next morning. Whistleblower found buried under police chapel. Decorated chief linked to cold case cover-up. K9 alerts spark major internal probe. Riley didn't sleep the night before. She didn't need to. She had driven straight to the local news station. A flash drive clutched in her hand, fire in her chest. She didn't ask for permission. She asked for airtime. And she got it. The anchor leaned forward in his chair, barely blinking as she laid it all out. The photos, the poison, the second body, the silence, the threats. By the time she finished, his face was pale. Within the hour, the media had the story. Within 3, the precinct was surrounded. By noon, Mercer had resigned. By nightfall, he was in handcuffs. The chapel was locked up. Crime scene tape fluttered in the wind where just days ago, mourners had stood and prayed. The entire town now knew that beneath the altar had been something rotten. Something hidden in the dark until a dog refused to sit still. Diesel. They called him emotional, unstable, too reactive. But he had been right. From the very beginning. It wasn't a sixth sense. It was instinct, loyalty, grief, sharpened into something pure. He never needed a badge to sniff out the truth. And now, every officer in the building stopped to pat his head. The chief from the neighboring district called him a hero. Kids left flowers at the steps of the precinct. Not for the badge, but for the German shepherd who wouldn't let his partner's father be forgotten. And Riley? She didn't ask for praise. She didn't wait for medals. She did what her father would have done. She finished the job. The files were turned in. The backup copies were uploaded to secure archives. The victims' families had names now. The bodies buried in silence finally had their stories told. She stood once more at her father's grave, a soft wind brushing against her uniform. The sun broke gently through the clouds, lighting up the marble headstone. The grass was still worn down from the funeral, but something about the place felt quieter now. Honest. She didn't speak right away. Didn't have to. Beside her, Diesel sat still. No leash, no command, just presence. His ears twitched once, then nothing. His breathing slow, calm, eyes locked on the treeline. Riley reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the folded notebook, the one with her father's writing. She had kept it with her the whole time. Pages worn from her fingers, corners bent, truths scribbled in tired hands. She crouched down and placed it at the base of the stone. "You were right," she whispered. "It was never what it seemed." The breeze picked up. The trees answered in their quiet way. She didn't cry. She'd done enough of that. Instead, she rested her hand on Diesel's back. He didn't move, just sat beside her like stone. Watchful, steady, like he was listening too. There were still things to be answered. Other names in those files. Other shadows behind the scenes. But for now, one truth had come to light. And a daughter had given her father peace. Riley stood. Diesel rose with her. They walked away from the grave without looking back. But as they reached the edge of the path, Diesel stopped. He turned his head, stared back, ears forward, still watching, not guarding a place, guarding a memory, a bond, promise. And Riley understood. Some partners wear vests, some wear collars, but the good ones, the real ones, they never stop protecting you, even after you're gone. Thank you to my amazing family for staying with me until the end of this story. Your support means the world to me. If you enjoyed this journey, I just know you'll love what comes next. I've prepared something even more exciting and surprising that I can't wait to share with you. Just click on the end card appearing on your screen right now to watch the next one.